President of Archaeological Indifference, Vice President of Truth, Secretary of Statistics, Minister of Celebrity Injustice, Chief of Staff and Serpent, Blessed Page Turner of the Great Book of Misdeeds and Overestimations, Bishop of the Great Climate War, Minister of the Deteriorating Sky, Baron of Epic Boredom and Self-Indulgence, all gathered notables, good morning. The technological machine, the machine of capital, and of capitalism, the force of the colonial era was the slave. From there, the mind state of the colonial era was implanted and embedded in every machine. So thus, in the industrial era, any engineer that created or designed a machine would explain the parts of the machine in terms of the master and the slave. If you take apart a camera, a recording device, a computer, the engineer will always define it and describe it in terms of the master and the slave. It's embedded in the machines. The word robot comes from the Czech language. It means slave or free labor. The fear of the colonial era was that the slave would learn too much and take over. The fear of the digital era is that the machine, the robot, will learn too much and take over. So what's new? Citizens, children of the night, bearers of the day torch, scorched and burned, burn not, the dam is broken, the curse is fled. Once muddied and still, the river runs red. All those ships that never sailed, the ones with their seacocks open that lied scuttled in their stalls, today I bring them back huge and intransitory and let them sail forever. If ever there were currents uncurrent, the wind cannot serve as truth's currency. Currently moon-marked and sun-sparked, unmarked bills, will I am certain I speak a new language, as is always the first sign of a new age. Hack into dietary sustenance, tradition versus health. Hack into comfort compliance. Hack into the rebellious gene. Hack into doctrine, capitalism, and relation of free labor and slavery. Hack into the history of the bank. Is beating the odds mere act of joining the winning team? Hack into desperation and loneliness, the history of community in the marketplace. Hack into land rights and ownership. Hack into business law, proprietorship. Hack into ambition and greed. Hack into forms of government, systems of control, the relation to suffering and sufferance. Hack into faith and morality, a treatment of one faith towards another. Hack into masculinity, femininity, sexuality, what is taught, what is felt, what is learned, what is shared. Hack into nature, biodynamics, biodiversity, cycles and seasons. Hack into time, calendars, Descartes, its relationship to doubt. Is it wired to fear, the notion of control, the space-time continuum, the force of gravity, whether the opposite of gravity is freedom? Hack into freedom, power, responsibility, justice, the Bill of Rights. Hack into coincidence, the summer of '68, the 27 Club, the number of people with Facebook profiles, people who choose to share, people who share too much, people seem lonely, people want to connect, people want to uplift, people need uplifting. Hack into self-help, self-sufficiency, and self-indulgence. Hack into crazy, hack into lunatic, hack into star, hack into infamous, notorious, the effects of the construct of poverty on the psyche. The effects of the construct of race, the victims that survived. There is a panel marked survival. 3 simple copper wires coiled round an orb, hack into orbit, equatorial landmines, useful and precious metals, coltan as cotton. Hack into hazardous, nuclear, blue clear, cloud forms and fish farms, cow farts and pig shit. Hack into horse, industrial, digital, hack into code. Use your instrument as metaphor. Harness your craft. Hack into the mainframe, dismantle definition, dogma, and duty. Hack into destiny, hack into dreams, subtext and subconscious. Hack into heart, cardio, Congo, blood-rich in oil. Hack into suffering and despair. Hack into the unfair advantage of those lucky enough to be born into one family or another, into one condition or another. Hack into the circumstantial evidence that proves the obvious and wakes the oblivious. Hack into birthright, bloodlines, royal and tainted. Hack into superstition, old wives' tales, rituals of the shaman. Hack into DNA, chemistry, the pharmaceutical industry, the modern-day rape of the forest. Hack into the coiling serpents, the time it takes for modern man to determine whether ancient women were foolish or not. Hack into the database. Hack into the subconscious, the panel marked survival. Hack into celebrity. Hack into the cultural development of taste. Hack into violence, fear, and ignorance. How are they linked? Thank you.
So thank you very much. Earlier today we had another performance, and it sort of was a commentary and a sort of a look at the struggles of particular communities across the world, in factories, and perhaps there's a complete sort of removal of the human side to individuals. And I see from your words as well, there is a sort of a rebellion in a way, or trying to remove certain barriers or constructs. If you could perhaps elaborate what inspired this piece.
Right. Well, I don't know how many people here are familiar with the precious mineral that is called coltan. But coltan is in all of our smartphones, all of our laptops, also in drones and missiles. It's mined, 85% of it is mined in Central and Eastern Africa, in countries like the Congo, Burundi, Rwanda. And as you might imagine, the situation around those mines is quite different from the situation as you line up outside of an Apple store or a Samsung store or what have you. And it's to the best interest of those corporations probably that you don't know what coltan is or question where it comes from. Now, I point out coltan, but if you look at the ticker tape on any economic forum, we'll see all of the precious minerals that are listed. We know the richesse that comes from oil, from uranium, from gold, and not only the precious minerals, but the history of our economies globally based so heavily on rubber, sugar, cotton, and the atrocities that occur in the name of the extraction of these elements. My argument essentially is that technology is a reflection of human awareness and consciousness. And outside of that, I mean, it's been 10 years or more since we've had a smartphone, for example. And of course, I live in California, in Los Angeles, but not far from Silicon Valley and all of the excitement surrounding new tech. But old issues, exploitation, old issues, poverty, dictatorships, tyranny, old issues, the killing of journalists, they still exist. And although technology has served to enrich in the lives of many and to connect us, and I believe in that human connection, and I believe that in the democracy of voices that are now being heard, there is a chance for technology to shift our relationship to each other and to humanity at large. But on the other hand, it can also be usurped by the powers. We know that a great deal of the technology that we have are first created by the military. before they fall into the private sector. And so I guess my work is very much about how we can take back that power and use our technology in ways that actually shifts humanity and lessens the gap and the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. That would be progress. That would be technological progress, because now when I think about coltan in relationship to cotton, I think about the analog exploitation that our digital advances are based on.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, yesterday we had, thank you. We had a poet from Egypt, and his approach was, and his words were to have, sort of to speak out through reflecting. And he had an active, sort of passive approach to a crisis, or trying to deal with a crisis. Perhaps there's a different tone here, but would you say there is an element of we need to reflect, we need to re-examine, or?
Well, I mean, I'm someone who makes his living writing poems. So I spend a great deal of time reflecting, and I believe in the arts and the power of arts, and of course there's a lot of intuitive grace that comes from that, but there's a lot of reflection that is necessary. And so yes, I think we have to achieve a balance,
Yes.
but we do also have to provoke. We do also have to challenge, and we do also have to question the system that keeps us in place.
Yes.
And so at some points, yes, there's need for reflect, but also we can look back and say, okay, there's no need to reflect any longer. When we see fascism, we know what it is.
Yes.
You know, and we can speak out and address it. We don't need to reflect any further.
Yes.
So there's a time and place for all of it.
Fantastic. And the reaction of the public to your poetry?
They hate it. No. It depends. It's hard to say. I mean, I've
Or inspired other voices also to
well,
speak?
you
or
know,
to be
my work,
support?
when I was first introduced to the world with a film that I wrote and acted in called Slam in 1998, which sparked globally the slam poetry movement,
Yes.
right? And I would say that, you know, my goal while working on that film was to encourage and inspire young people to realize that they could speak up, that they could use their voices to question and challenge authority, to question and challenge the norm, and that they had every right, and that the canon of poets didn't have to be dead. And I know that poetry is very much alive in this country, for example. But in the United States, when you learn about poets, we often learn about the dead white male canon, or the, you know, like it's very limiting. And so the idea of a living poet
Yes.
in the free market economy of the US is
And has technology helped sort of reinforce the poet of today?
well, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly in the fact that, I mean, like, you know, on one hand, I would say that poetry, you know, like, I recite poems, but people will now say, oh, you're a slam poet. They'll throw a new word in front of it, you know, and as if it's something new that I'm doing, whereas, like, poetry and the oral tradition of poetry is ancient. And so the excitement around slam poetry, for example, is not that it's something new. It's more so that in the face of all that is new, we are gathering to celebrate something ancient.
Yes.
So in many ways, I would say technology, I mean, in that people can tune into it or find it more easily or readily. But on the other hand, I've always thought of poetry as technology. I've thought of the words that I write as a means of coding and decoding. And oftentimes as I travel with poems, I feel like I'm traveling, I felt like a traveling salesman spreading, you know, a relationship to language and ideology that is sort of like walking around with a new technological gadget and saying, no, this is how we do it. You don't have to say all this to say that. You can, you know, just use these keywords and the point is there.
Fascinating. Well, thank you very much, Saul, really.
Thank you all for listening.
Pleasure.
And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Take care.
Thank
Peace.
you.